Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. The federal government has scrapped the national policy mandating the use of indigenous languages as the medium of instruction in Nigerian schools. Minister of Education Tunji Alausa announced the cancellation last Wednesday at the 2025 Language in Education International Conference, organized by the British Council in Abuja. The policy, approved in 2022 as the National Language Policy, stipulated that children from early childhood education to primary 6 should be taught in their mother tongue or the language of the immediate community. Joining us now to highlight the possible pros and cons of this decision is women affairs and social activist and broadcast journalist Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Good morning. And welcome to the morning show.
Welcome.
Good morning.
It's nice to see you all. My people today.
Yes, so fantastic to have you. Now let's get straight into this. This was announced by the Minister of Education, this removal of a policy requiring indigenous languages in primary school, and very interestingly at the British Council, which of course is our former colonial masters, and there's a lot of history there with the use of English or vernacular, as they call it, language in school. So how important is it, do you think, to have indigenous language as a method of educating students? And also, do you agree with the minister that this, was causing people to fail exams when they got, further ahead in their education because they weren't able to meet up with their peers? Okay,
I'm going to start with Ekaro.
Ekaro.
What? Alafia. So,
They
because that's the first rebellious thing we're going to do, because there's no way anybody would agree with it. And if I hadn't been taught my mother tongue, if none of you had been taught your mother tongue, none of us would have been able to say that very small world. But I'm here representing my sister, by the way, and I feel a bit of a fraud because she's the one who wrote the open letter, Dr. Bibi Bakare. Yeah. Dr. Bibi Bakare-Yusuf, she wrote an open letter to the minister because, and Stephen Osezwa, I must say, who is the founder of the African Indigenous Language Film Festival, he also wrote the same thing. And they were both upset. And it's interesting. They don't know each other, but they give the same recommendations. Indeed, Stephen references Minister Fafunwa and the Ife, yes, and the Ife experiment. How, in fact, this idea that children are best taught in their mother tongue from primary school, and then later on when English is introduced, makes them stronger. This is not just a sort of flowery thing that we feel emotional about. It's an experiment that Professor Fafunwa had done that had actually been done in this country. So, as Stephen argued, why then would we want to throw away something that has been tested and proven and through experiment? That's one. What my sister Bibi says is that when you deny the idea of children being taught in their own language, indeed, the way the minister said it, that I said, is because he's kind of grabbing what we call correlation with causation that don't match. Saying the reason these children are failing exams, NECO, WAEC and JAMB, I think it said, is because they're being taught indigenous language. He has literally, let me put it in a simple way, thrown our languages under the bus. And that's what Bibi is saying. Look at your name. Our minister's name is Minister Tunji Alausa. People will say Alausa. It's Alausa. Am I wrong, Steve?
Alausa.
Alausa, thank you.
Alausa.
You see, Alausa. And that name in itself, as my sister wrote, is an interwoven. It means walnut. It actually means walnut, and it's a trade of how Yoruba trading between the Hausa land happened. So there is no way. You asked if I agree. No, there is no pro to it. By cancelling that, and fundamentally the other thing is his statement is false. His statement is blatantly false. 3 years is not enough to actually sort of monitor and test this and come to such a blatantly ridiculous conclusion. I mean, it's so ridiculous that it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
One wonders what sort of vagabondism that our minister is intending on doing, because it would appear...
That's a strong word to use, isn't it?
Well, it is vagabondism, because 3 years, he's a medical doctor, is he not?
He is, yes.
Right. He knows that there is no test, no new medicine in a lab is qualified after 3 years. It takes years of research, of testing, of test results, retesting. So why then does he think...
Except for the COVID vaccine.
Well, yeah, which is why we're still having problems with it now. No, it's why we're still having problems, let's be honest, because they had to rush it, right? So how then can he take our children? He knows better. And so all I can think of is that it's either vandalism, if you don't like vagabondism, or it's vagabondism. Yeah. Because I grew up abroad. I speak Yoruba very, very well. I speak to you on the phone, I speak Yoruba 9 out of 10 times, don't I?
Absolutely.
I do. And why do I do that? Because when I speak with my people that I've taken in, that I know they understand Yoruba, Yoruba is the language that we sort of get familiar in. And when I speak English, I feel like there's still a barrier between us. Again, children, 3 years old, none of them have done, they started at age 6. None of them have done WAEC. None have done NECO. So how did the minister come up?
You're absolutely right. I mean, thank you for highlighting that particular aspect, because, you know, it's starting from a very young age. But, you know, some of the criticism is the fact that there might be lack of, you know, implementing this practice properly, you know, teaching materials and all of that. But we've seen countries like, I believe, Finland, Wales, even some African countries like South Africa has 11 official languages. Yeah. So they're quite diverse in, you know, their teaching. So I don't know, do you really believe that Nigeria can implement this process where we have all of these
so many languages?
Yes, and all of that?
Yes, we can. First of all, I think it's at this point I'm going to bring up the budget, because I had to say what could be causing this, because I like to say something. I say, those who care, plan. And it jars people. But I say to them, think about it. If you want to have your birthday party because you want to have it, you start to plan for it. So what you care about, you plan for. So, and once you start planning for it, the first thing you start with is your budget, right? And so I started to wonder, what is it? What could be driving? And it's so random as well. Can we just say it is totally random? There's nothing at all, no scientific evidence to support it. It's merely, I don't know, you don't like vagabond, what would you like me to use? You know, vandalism. I think that's better. So I checked on the budget.
You think that our local language and heritage has been vandalized?
No, I think he's
vandalizing
of this. He's vandalizing our heritage and a policy that Minister Adamu brought in. Yeah. And indeed, we must mention him, because when Minister Adamu brought in that policy, everybody was excited. Because again, we were going back to a foundation that had been proven, tested and proven by Professor Fafunwa. Right? We were going back, because those who get disadvantaged with this the scrapping of this policy, are the poor people, are the people in the hinterlands, are the people who don't have access to teachers who can speak English like us. But why should children be disadvantaged? When we're all born, we're born making sounds. The language you hear first is the language you come familiar with. Why is it that white people are not able to say gbe or kwe? Because it was never familiar to them, right? But it is familiar to us, because that's what we hear. Yes, thank you. The budget. So I had to check today and say, you know, what is the Nigerian federal government's budget for 2025 on education? 3.52 trillion, representing 7.8% of the total 66.11 trillion budget, which, by the way, is lower than the 2024 allocation.
Yes.
Sorry, renewed hope. What hope are we renewing?
So you're saying that is enough? to even
It's nowhere near enough. I think UNESCO represents something like 25%.
That's the recommendation.
Yeah,
but
right?
in Africa, people say that if you're able to do up to 15%, you will have started well.
There you go. But what I'm even saying is, so if the minister stands up, he's going to say, oh, I'm doing this, according to the president's renewed hope agenda. Well, you can't be renewing any hope if you're reducing the budget. You're practically desecrating any hope that these children have in the hinterlands. You are desecrating any hope that we have, the pride that we have in our indigenous languages. And yes, is it complicated like you ask? Yes. It's about books. Because some will argue and say, we have to create books and all of this. Those who care plan. Has the minister actually bothered to do, the moment he became Minister of Education, did he bother to order and say, I want a review of this before coming to this? Had he done that, then he would have known and asked for an analysis. He would have known what's missing, what needs to be done better. Indeed, he wouldn't have just scrapped it. And if I may just finish. And the reason I call it vandalism is because the same minister tried to remove science. And Professor Anthony Killer came after him and demanded a change, and he said, I will fight you for this. And at this moment, we must all rise up and fight for our indigenous language, because it's vandalism.
He tried to remove science?
Yes.
No, I think the argument then was that English compulsory, passing English language at O level.
That they don't need science.
But I think that they've corrected it.
Well, because Anthony Killer went after him. And remember, he went after him. And that's the thing. Why would you say we don't need science? I don't have to be a scientist.
Maybe it was testing the waters.
Is it testing the waters now again?
Maybe, because I will expect that if you're going to make such a fundamental announcement, it won't be at a British Council event. You will speak directly to Nigerians and not just make it a sidebar at another event. But that's my thinking.
That's because you're nice. Like
but let me come back to your sister's open letter to the minister, Dr. Bibi, Bakare-Yusuf. I thought that was well written, strongly worded, and direct to the point. But I was wondering if maybe it would have communicated more if there was a Yoruba version of that letter to the minister, given that your sister tried to give us the meaning of his name. It won't be Walnut, by the way. It will be the owner of Walnut, Alausa.
Yes, Alausa.
Because his name is not Awusa.
Yes.
So that's one. Maybe
we can have a Yoruba version, absolutely.
Because I think that it will
make it stronger.
It will assist what the argument is.
Good point.
But then beyond that, will you think that this is the position of, say, a Cassava Republic Press, which your sister runs? And how do you think that publishers, whether they do publish in local language or publish in English, how do they think that they can also jump into this argument, like Stephen Osezua did, like your sister did, so that the minister can be, it won't be fair to say to be educated, but to say that the minister would be
enlightened. Maybe.
Say that again?
I said enlightened of their own position. Made
to have more robust interrogation of the review of what his predecessor, Dr. Adamu Adamu, and then Dr. Fafunwa, who also was the Minister of Education at a point, and they tested the waters, and it was empirical. As Aman Rufai Hussaini would say, that the experiment that they had in Ife over 6 years showed that those who were taught in mother tongues performed better.
Yeah.
I think maybe what the minister has failed to do is to give it enough time and to stick with the recommendations of the Fafunwa, policy at that time, to say that don't just say in local language, make English the second language, so that while you are teaching them in their local languages, you're supporting them with English. And they imbibe, understand it better. Therefore, what do you think publishers should do? What do you think the President and National Assembly should do? Should we just forget it and run away with it because we say, it didn't work after 3 years, and then we're done?
Good God, no. We will not do that. To fight for this, our bossita lati fight for it. Because this language that I've just spoken, it is me. Like my sister wrote, BB said, she said, and she says here, a nation that silences its mother's tongues silences its future. Children deserve to learn in the language that knows them best, right? So there is no way. Look at what they do. I think in Lagos Assembly, they have a day
every Thursday.
Every Thursday, and it's interesting. I haven't seen it, but I've always wanted to watch. I'd like to see it and see how they and actually see. Perhaps they even communicate better, because let's be honest, there's a lot of bastardization of the English language that we hear here. When I moved here, somebody would say to me, "Well done." I speak Yoruba. My mother spoke to me in Yoruba. So they say, "Well done, well done." That's it. What have I done? They said the one care kushe. Well, since when does kushe translate to well done? But do you understand? So we get a lot of that. So perhaps it would have been interesting, like I said, if they can communicate, to watch how perhaps they communicate better and they deliver better.
But have you heard some parents complain and, they don't want their children learning their mother tongue at a young age? They say that it's disadvantageous to them. Have you heard that argument as well? And do you believe that the minister is bowing to those parents' pressure? Because we have seen that.
Okay, let me answer Stephen's question and then I'll come. Yes, all publishers. My sister already publishes those books. Other publishers publish those books. When you see those books, Iwe is Alarowi in the old days alphabet, the Yoruba alphabet book. A, B, D, A, F, E, G. You didn't know I could do that, did you? A, B, D, A, F, E, G. You didn't know I could do that. Do you understand? And I was brought up in England. I went to English school. But my mother would read that. And so I remember, again, the language that knows you best.
Abidiolowe, we will say.
Thank you, that's it, Abidiolowe. So,
it
is
standard Yoruba.
It's standard Yoruba. Although the Imbaders have their own, and their own rascality.
It is the standard Yoruba.
Their own rascality is different, but we won't discuss it now. But yeah, so no, we mustn't sit back. I think before I come to you, Oji, I think what the minister fails on a more serious note is to sit down with stakeholders. Mm-hmm. That's what he must do. He must learn that it is not his job to make some sort of moratorial change on everything and anything just because they're renewing hope. Just because you're renewing hope, you mean hope to let down. Must you? No, you mustn't. So what he needs to do, and if he respects the industry, if he respects academics, if he respects the educators, indeed, if he respects the children and the future of our children and our language, he will learn to sit with stakeholders and say, look, this is what we found. Where do we go from here?
Very quickly, Ireti, before you go to Oji's question, a lot of people even think that if that matter gets to the president, who is an advocate of Yoruba language, that the president will say, go back to the thing and make it work better.
Well,
because what brought him to office was on the vehicle of the strength of his mother tongue, Emilokon. Therefore, he won't support anything that will denigrate the local language. But I digress.
Yeah.
Go on.
But because we keep speaking one of the main languages here. We're speaking Yoruba. I speak Yoruba too. Mm-hmm. However,
you're half Yoruba.
Of course, there's no half.
There's no half.
I'm fully Yoruba and I'm fully Benin.
There's no half in this room.
However, a lot of people talk about minority languages and minority protection, and the minister has said that there is not funding to be able to provide instruments for these people, and as somebody
and
who's
that's why
often
I mentioned the budget.
Yes. But within that budget also, the National Assembly, the House of Representatives on Thursday has just suspended computer-based testing until 2030, also because of a lack of funding. So the minister doesn't set his own funding. There's only so much he can work with. So is it possible that this call is not to the minister, but those who are working the budget, because he can't set the budget for indigenous learning, he can't set the budget for computer-based teaching, and our children are being left behind because we don't have the funds. So is this possible that this is not coming from the minister himself, but he's working with small, a little bit, and trying to stretch it to make a lot.
I think you make a good point. Oji, let me answer your question and I'll come to Adeswa's point. Yes, we do hear that. Very quick, very, very short. Steve, you'll know the show where I was a pioneer on the sofa, a woman's show on another TV station. It's about 10 years old now. Hint, the person that started it has just left. You know the one I'm talking about now. I was one of the pioneer women on that sofa. Just like that, I'm speaking Yoruba, I'm speaking Kenyan. This same debate came up and I was fighting. I was the one on the side of we must keep our indigenous language, this, that, and whatever. One of my then co-hosts said, no, of what use is Yoruba to me? What children is he going to make in my life? Then we go on to a topic that's to do with medical whatever. And then she goes on to say colon instead of colon. I said, do you see? Do you see what Yoruba would have done in your life? She didn't know. She said colon. She meant to say the colon. So I've heard that. And you often hear those who say that are 9 out of times quite ignorant. And it comes sometimes out of fear. The fear that they can't speak it. And so they can't pass it on to their children. My son, for instance, English, French. In my head, I speak Bonjour. Steve, don't laugh, you know. That's all I can say in French. And I speak Yoruba to him, right? Children will assimilate all the time. So I don't agree. And I don't think the minister should actually be pandering to those parents. When Randall Center, this summer, this school, J. Randall Center, they had a program for children to come and learn in Yoruba and stuff for the month. Do you know that my nieces were there as well? And even though they speak Yoruba, they were all there, the two of them. But do you know, most of the children there, 90% practically, if you like, all of them, were children of the middle class, where the parents were saying, we will do whatever it takes. So just let it, so they was thinking, Patewo, Iwe Kiko, Laisi Oko, Ati Ada. Yeah, you're impressed by your auntie. Darling, you'll be surprised what I can.
You know that?
Go
Oh, you actually know.
We find sings it for her.
I understand your
You see, it's such a beautiful song. There you go.
Fantastic. I think that's a perfect place for us to wrap it up this beautiful Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us, Ireti Bakare-Yusuf, broadcast journalist, women affairs and women's rights activist. As you said, we need our indigenous languages. It doesn't make you any less intelligent.
Yes. Absolutely.
It does not make you any less more intelligent. I think sometimes people feel if they can't express themselves in English, it means they can't express themselves at all. And that's not true.
Yes.